I solemnly swear to back up my important documents and precious moments on March 31st. That's the credo of World Backup Day. It's March 31st, it's Thursday. But shouldn't it be every day? So let's talk about it. All right, welcome back. I'm Chris Burns from Techie Gurus, and it's all about backup. The entire month of April will be dedicated to backup, but since we're in the last week of March and World Backup Day is on March 31st, I thought I'd take this opportunity to speak about backup, speak about the ways that you can do backup, and just give you an idea that it's only a small part of an overall picture. So let's talk about that. So as you're sitting there next time looking at your cell phone, how many pictures are on there? Are you backing them up? How many pictures have you taken with a digital camera over the years? Are you backing those up? See, a lot of people will use like USB hard drives and like things like NASs, and they'll store the precious moments, the precious documents on those. But is that the only backup you should be doing? The answer is probably not. And in a world of destruction with things like Deadbolt ransomware that's hitting like QNAP, network attached storage devices, Synology has had their own problems. Western Digital had a problem where people could just go in and reset a NAS to default and the person would lose everything that they had. We have to take our idea of backup and expand it. So let's go over kind of like the simple ways that we can back up our personal lives, and I'll try to also put that into business perspective as well. So let's talk about one of the probably the most popular and basic backup strategies, and that's the 3-2-1 backup strategy. So what does it mean? It means you're going to have 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media, and one of them has to be off-site. So kind of let's put that in perspective for like what we just talked about. So let's say you have a hard drive, a USB hard drive that you plug into like your laptop or your desktop or your Mac. It really doesn't matter. And you take a backup of all the pictures off your laptop, off your device, onto that drive. Have you satisfied the 3-2-1 rule? Well, the answer is no. You have 2 copies. You don't have 3. And one of them is not off-site. So how do we take it off-site? Well, there's plenty of backup solutions out there that will help you take your pictures to the cloud. You could leverage something like OneDrive automatically to put pictures in there and back those up. You can use something like Carbonite or Backblaze or some other tool like that to back up your computer, but then also you can still take that copy to your hard drive. That way you satisfy the 3-2-1 backup rule. But is that enough? For personal use, probably. It's probably plenty. But as we get into business data, it's probably not enough. Because now we're facing all these challenges with, okay, well, what if somebody gets access to my data? Like if somebody hacks this, what happens in that case? And the reality is a lot of times they try to go after your backups first, because if they destroy your backups, guess what? They can encrypt your data and you're done because you don't have a backup. So there's a couple of other ways that we can kind of enhance the 3-2-1 backup strategy and kind of go to a point where we kind of add a little bit to it. So as good as the 3-2-1 backup strategy is personally, as we get into business, it's really not that great. And one of the challenges we have with business is people are attacking us all the time. Now, is it always successful? No. The reality is no, it's not always successful. But when it is, one of the ways that they do now is they try to destroy your backups. Because if we can destroy your backups and then we can encrypt your data and we can apply ransomware to that, well, guess what? You don't have any backups, so now you have to pay it. So we have to take the 3-2-1 backup strategy and kind of move it even further and say, okay, how can we make sure that one of the copies of the backup that we have, preferably the offsite one, cannot be altered? No matter what, cannot be altered. And that's where immutable storage comes in, or something called like an air gap system, where you can't modify that data, period. You can restore from it, you just can't modify it. And that's important. And that's important for recoverability, just in case something bad does happen. Now, is that cost effective? It depends. It depends on what kind of software you're using. It depends on what kind of backup solution that you're using. it's come down in price so much so that I think any business out there should have a level of immutable storage or air gap system included. So now that we've kind of covered like the backup strategy, let's talk about what else can we do to make sure that we're doing this properly. So I started with the backup strategy, but I kind of skipped an important part. And one of the most important parts of backup is identifying what you need to back up. You know, personally, it's pretty easy, right? Pictures, documents, tax documents, things like that. Maybe it's homework if you're in school. That's easy. But what about business? What do you need to back up? And it's not always that simple. Like, yes, you need to be backing up business data, but do you know where all of your business data is? Do you have policies in your business to make sure that people store the data where it needs to be stored? Because if you don't, and they don't follow it, or even if you do and they don't follow it, there's a good chance that you're not backing up data that's critical to your business. So one of the things we have to do is first is identify the data that we need to back up, make sure that's in whatever repository or in whatever location that you need it, and then we apply that 3-2-1 backup strategy plus the immutable storage option or /air gapped, whatever you choose to go with. So that's what we have to get to. We have to identify all of that. And that's harder in business. It's pretty easy in personal use. We don't have that many devices, but in business, it becomes you have a bunch of employees. They store data different ways. You have to make sure that people follow the same processes, procedures, and policies to make sure that the data is in the right spot. So now let's talk about recovery, because that's one of the most important parts of actual backup. One of the misconceptions of backup is that recovery is fast. It can be. It depends on how you set it up. But in practice, recovery takes probably 5 times longer than it does to actually do the backup. So if it takes you 4 hours to back up, there's a good chance it's going to take upwards of 20 hours to recover. And think about this from a personal perspective. If it's something that you only need a couple of things at once, it's really simple, it's probably something you can restore in just a few seconds or a few minutes. In business, so what happens if your backup is your server or its servers? That recovery process is not quick. Now, what if you haven't been testing your backups properly? Just because you have backups doesn't mean they're actually working. We need to go through testing. This applies both professionally and personally. So just because you're backing up things on your phone or your laptop or stuff like that, it's a good thing to do a check to make sure that the data is actually good that you're backing up. Make sure it's actually going through properly. Now, when we talk about business, yeah, backups should give you a success or fail. And if there's any kind of warning or everything, we need to look at that and make sure that it's still backing up the files. As we look at the backup, we have to make sure that we can recover it. So we need to do test recoveries. And this is something we need to do quite often. A lot of people say do it every quarter. I say, hey, you know what? Maybe do it every month. Take a small subset of data and try to recover it, make sure it's good. And we can go down this rabbit hole a little further. We can talk about, hey, if we need to recover a server, if it's hosting applications that are critical to your business, just because you have a backup, when you restore, doesn't mean that the application is actually going to run. That's important. Now, a lot of systems out there will just give you a screenshot and say, hey, look, the backup's good, the server boots. But did all the services start? Did the application start? Did the web server that you need running start? And if you can't answer that, that's something we have to go through and look at and make sure that we're testing the actual applications that are being applied inside the backup. So let's recap. It's World Backup Day on March 31st. We need to celebrate this, but we need to be celebrating backup every single day. There's more to backup. We're going to talk over the next month about disaster recovery, which backup is a part of. We're going to talk about business continuity. We're going to take this structure, this idea, and we're going to expand it to your business. We're going to expand it to how you can protect your business, good times and bad times, and how you can make sure that your business runs even in the event of a disaster. So until then, celebrate World Backup Day on March 31st. Make sure you're backing your things up, especially personally and professionally. And until next time, stay cyber safe.